Hi, and welcome to our very awesome panel on Elastic Security experiences and lessons learned. We decided to do this panel as a way to share our experiences and try to maybe give our ideals of where Elastic could go in the future. Let's go ahead and start with introductions. My name's Ivan Ninichuck. I've been working with Elastic as a product since 2018, so about 4 years. I was a freelancer on Upwork. Now I work for Simplify, which does security operations management. And over there now I am enlarging their integrations with Elastic as well as MITRE ATT&CK. Suhavi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Ivan, and thanks for having me on the panel. My name is Suhavi, and right now I work as a software engineer. I work for a insurance provider company. We make insurance software, and I kind of work on cloud infrastructure. I actually started working with Elastic through my side projects sometime last year, so it's been a really fun time. I've also gotten to be a part of the community, which is really great.
Okay, and then next we have Austin. I was absolutely astounded by the amount of pull requests that he has on the Elastic GitHub. Austin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Austin Songer, of course. I'm a security engineer. Been doing that for around like 5 years now. Previously worked at a managed security service provider, kind of in a SOC environment, but I just recently started a new role with FormAssembly as a security engineer. And I've been a frequent contributor to the Elastic detection repo. And I've been using Elastic on and off for around 3 to 4 years.
Fantastic, thank you. So I'll go ahead and start. So like I said, I started with Elastic in 2018. And so I basically started platform contracts with version 5 and version 6. I think we can all agree that there has been a ridiculous amount of movement across Elastic's development cycle, especially with, every little minor change in version 7 seems to bring fantastic new features. I know I've had a lot of meetings with Elastic's product team over the years, giving hints where buttons should be or clicks, that should be faster. And so we've really moved forward, as a community, not just a company, creating things in a vacuum. And where I see the future is going to be more out of the box investigating. Because quite frankly, we need to have junior cybersecurity employees have the same abilities that we want our seniors to. And so what we need to do is take tools like MITRE ATT&CK and known threat hunting patterns that we can put with adversaries and put almost pre-built correlation rules, for instance, using EQL in the timelines, example hunts, things like that, that are really going to lay the foundation of learning along with what we're doing. So now I'm going to turn it over to Suhavi, and we'll hear about her projects.
So I actually, like I mentioned earlier, got started with Elastic sometime last year. So I graduated from college and I got my first job. And I noticed that outside of work, I wasn't really doing much else. So I decided to start writing. And one of the things I wrote was an article about technologies that I think were pretty cool. And then after a while, I was like, why don't I try to build something with like some of those technologies? And I ended up choosing blockchain, Elasticsearch, and QR codes. I just needed something for Q. So I ended up with those 3, and that's kind of how I started working on projects. So I decided to go with building a blockchain, like a decentralized mobile application that tracks various things in the supply chain using QR codes as like identification. And I brought Elasticsearch into the mix because I knew it was really good at, ingesting data and then providing useful analytics with that. So I thought that would be really cool. That's what I ended up doing. There were some like challenges that I had to sort of deal with, just because there wasn't a lot of documentation on blockchain applications specifically. And then just like working with all the data and decoding all the transactions, that kind of stuff. But overall, it was a really fun experience. I think it's really cool to work with cutting edge technology that's like sort of disrupting the industry and just like getting my hands dirty with all that stuff. And I really thought using Elastic was good because you can have those multiple sources of data, like you mentioned, like news sources, as well as the actual blockchain transactions, and also its ability to like handle just like large data sets in general.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're gonna go, we'll talk to Austin, and Austin and I actually met the first time officially because I mentioned a small little gap in the detection rule repo, which was not, there was an oversight where there were plenty of rules monitoring event logging in Windows, but for some reason it was missed that you could turn them off. And the reason I was focusing on that defense evasion tactic was because of the SolarWinds supply chain attack, because a lot of defensive systems were turned off in that attack. And so I had written a blog on this. And then Austin, though, Austin ran with this. He was probably already working on it on his own because, like we know, he's a great contributor to that repo. And he wrote out the rule itself. And he even found more ways that event logging could be turned off. So Austin, let's turn to you.
Yeah, so I've been using Elastic for a while now, but when it comes to like the security portion, like I've been using hardcore for a year, basically when I was working at a SOC environment. Basically we deployed Elastic for a new client that we were doing. Some of the things that I really, let's say, enjoyed a lot about the portion of, let's say, using, let's say, the Elastic SIM portion is the detections, how it's a community driven part of the Elastic SIM tool, and just being able to contribute and get to know like the people that are behind the scenes that are actually making the rules themselves for the product, as well as all the research that they will post on the Elastic blog when it comes to new ransomware attacks or whatnot that may come out any given day. Like there's ones, I think there was a recent one that was just published from how to do it, Windows vulnerability. Lately, I saw a rule that was published just recently that was pushed out in the Elastic repo. And the thing that I liked a lot about like the Elastic SIM tool is that it's constantly changing. Like every release, I see all these new features that I've actually been like, oh, I wish Elastic SIM had this, but then like literally the next release, what I was hoping that Elastic had, it would be part of that next release. And that has been like the great thing about seeing the Elastic security evolve over time, is how like every release, something new is added to the portfolio of features when it comes to the security portion of the Elastic.
So Austin, I want to start talking about what challenges we faced and the advice we would give to anybody, you know, starting out or maybe in the middle of their journey. So what maybe would you have liked to have known when you started, and what gotchas you might be able to share with newcomers?
I think I will first go to when it comes to contributing to, let's say, the Elastic detection repo. So some of the challenges initially basically was wanted to actually contribute to the rule set. And after a while of that, I started to communicate more with the team that works a lot on the detection repo, and basically got to know that there's certain type of rules that they're looking for. Basically, this is what they told me, like look for low-hanging fruit, basically the obvious ones that maybe they don't have a rule for that they don't have a rule yet for that specific area. And then basically you build a rule based off of a a hole in their rule set that you see that you know that you could build something and fill that hole. Then on second is using the MITRE Cyber Analytics repo, which basically allows you to basically look at compare the MITRE attack and rules that fulfills those certain technique IDs for the signal rule set, as well as the elastic detection repo, and use that as well as because maybe there would be a 0 in this one MITRE attack, and you can basically use that as a starting point of building a rule for that MITRE attack specifically, so you can fill that MITRE attack hole that you may see in the repo.
Yeah, and I know when I started, the best way I did it at first was I was part of a Facebook community group. I've also gotten involved with the LA meetup, Los Angeles area meetup, because I happen to be in the Los Angeles region, but there's meetups all over the world that you can get a part of and be a part of. And then now I think everybody will agree that the Elastic community Slack, if you're using Elastic in any way, you need to be on that. And you can head to the Elastic community website, and they have the link right there for it. Because then you get to talk to users. They have engineers that are there. Suhavi, can you give us a little bit about challenges you faced? And, maybe, I saw you nod your head. So let's hear about how community interaction helped you.
When I first started out, actually, I didn't even know that there was a Slack group until I was added to it. Before that, I was just looking through documentation. I found that usually when I'm looking for documentation, the source is usually the most helpful. So the actual Elastic website, the official documentation was very helpful. But there were also forums.
There's a Discuss forum as well.
That's what I was looking at when I had questions. So I'm really glad that I'm part of the Slack group now, because that's basically where I get all my information from, and talking to other people as well. So yeah, very
awesome.
Very yeah. Totally agree with the forum. That's actually part of. I was on there a lot, and I got to a point where I felt like I had enough knowledge that I would be able to answer questions and being able to contribute more with them, and I was able to start answering people's questions that I've ran into in the past, and that has actually been a great learning experience, and it actually has made me even more proficient when it comes to Elastic as a whole.
Now, Suhavi, I have a question for you. I've tried both the Python client and the JavaScript client for Elastic, and I'm interested to know first of all, which client did you use when interacting with the API? And maybe, how did you make that decision? And what do you have to say to new developers that might be looking at this?
The client that I ended up using was the Node.js one.
Okay, yeah.
And in general, documentation for that, solid, it was easy to use.
How about you, Austin? How have you overcome your challenges? And how do you think you can, how can you really get that across to people, how you overcame them?
Well, let's start by, there's always numerous challenges, because there's always going to be challenges. But let's say for simple, I ran to a challenge, let's say, with the Elastic detections in the Cabana app itself, which when it comes to sending, using the actions to send, let's say, that information for that rule being executed to email, to Jira, and whatnot. One of the issues was having to go on each individual detection and basically programming it to send it where you want, and that's a lot of rules to do it individually. So one of the ways that I overcome that was talk to one of the product security managers and developed a API script that would actually basically do all that automation when it comes to making sure that all my actions are going to be the same for all the different detections. And
wow.
Just
That's
that back
impressive.
and forth, and just that back and forth was nice to have because you get to get to know them more.
Yeah. That's really neat. I would definitely say, I started back in the day when we were still kind of making custom Logstash configurations, and that, one of my biggest challenges was schemas and such. And so definitely Elastic Common Schema, revolutionized really the ability to work with those data sources, make sure that we're sending those, those correct responses from detection rules. And the other thing that I really learned with Elastic is you really need to stay ahead of things. The releases, I mean, all of us have praised Elastic for the amount of new features we get and the amount of changes we get. They're very responsive, but I've also noticed, especially when I was a freelancer and I was building out whole monitoring stacks, it also became almost a hurdle because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't reinventing the wheel, or at least next model's wheel. Austin, I'd like to hear this from you because you seem to experience the same thing where you have a thought about something you want and it might come out, or it might come out 6 months from now. So if you have your employer telling you, hey, can we build this out? How do you go about it? I know one thing I do is I'll actually check on Elastic Slack, and I'll actually ask, does anybody know if this feature's planned? Just so I'm not reinventing next year's model. I'd like to hear what your experiences have been with that, because for me, that was a big challenge, especially project management wise.
Yeah, so probably one of the first things that I ran into was initially at first it was lacking like the threat intel type of feature, and now they did have the MISP module, but that is very limited in what it was about, like what it could do for you. So at that time, we're actually developing our own way of like ingesting like threat intel from other platforms like Alien Vault, OTX, or Anomaly, or whatnot, that involved like deploying another Elastic incident and like using that information to basically read off of and get that information. And during that process of building that, I was like, they must know like they need more threat intel. So that time I'm always on GitHub. So I was going through checking the GitHub, and I came across that they're working on a threat intel module that incorporated OTX and whatnot. And so like that's kind of what I've been doing now. Whenever I think about something that it's missing, I would check GitHub and the Cabana app, the integrations app, and see if something's missing. And then if I don't see any type of issue or anything noted, then I will actually go and create an issue and put that information that I think Elastic the SIM needs, and then I would submit it, and then just go back and forth in the issue itself with the maintainers of the project.
Nice. I need to start looking forward in GitHub like you've been doing. I think that would have helped me a lot if I had been doing that a couple of years ago. So thank you for sharing that, definitely. The other thing that comes to mind, and we're in virtual conferences now, so this seems kind of a little bit obvious, but one of the things that changed that has helped me twice in my career has been going to the in-person Elastic cons, the little regional ones. I've been able to go to 2 of them because this was before COVID, thankfully, and I know both times the Ask Me Anything booth, first of all, is amazing. Kitty, let's not join the conference. The Ask Me Anything booth is amazing. And then the other thing is I was able to talk during the kind of, happy hour time after the conference with Elastic engineers and with others in the industry. And I was able to just explain what my projects were. And then they kind of gave me a direction, showed me different tools I could be using. And then they also talked about what Elastic had in mind. I know the first time they were talking about the SIM app, and this was almost a year before it came out. And then the second time it was Fleet and the Elastic Agent, because I actually had a client that was asking me to automate the deployment of sorry, not beeps. I'm thinking R2D2 here, but the deployment of beats with their configurations. And I was talking about it at ElasticCon during the happy hour. And then they said, you know what? Wait for Fleet. And I said, wait a minute, what's Fleet? And they gave me a hint on what it was. And I realized, wait a minute, again, let's not build next year's model if we can avoid it. And that really saved me a lot of work because I was able to tell my employer, we're going to spend a lot of money developing this, time-wise. And then it's going to be replaced by a feature very soon.
Yeah, so I actually have a question. How do you get into contributing to the open source repo? I know every open source project has their own contribution rules. So what's it like?
Austin, I'll let you take that one.
I thought it was, it's been, I don't remember what drove me to, but yeah, it was actually, there was that Exchange vulnerability that came out in March, and that was the first time I saw the information about that one came up, and I just grabbed the information from that Exchange vulnerability that turned out to be I think 3 to 5 vulnerabilities or whatever, and I submitted a new rule issue, just a super draft raw, it wasn't that good. It was my first one, but then the contributors, the employees that work for Elastic, basically took that initial and turned it into a rule, and that was when I got my first author name put on it with the Elastic team as well, and that's kind of what got me going more into the contributing, and then I started to do more with the Sigma repo, but also bouncing back, and it's kind of been an endless thing that I've just got a good interest into, when it comes to making the rules itself, and it's just been kind of fun trying to help the repo and the rule set get larger and better as the days go on.
Yeah, and I'll add a little bit to that too. One thing to know about contributing with Elastic is they do have a contributors agreement that you sign when you first start, and basically everything that you write, definitely you get the authorship, you're down as the pull request author, but it does go under the Elastic license. For instance, if you're contributing a rule, then it becomes part, of the Elastic license, and that, that's how it's done.
Yeah, and that's actually one key. And you wouldn't know that you haven't, because in a pull request, you'll get notified that you haven't signed that yet. So it kind of enforces it. But it's pretty basic stuff that you just read in the repo itself, and it's not that bad. And you kind of have to bounce off, because if you create a rule that's, let's say, similar to a different rule that someone else created out there, you kind of have to be aware of that, because then you kind of want to, even if it's super similar, you kind of want to, let's say, credit that person too. Just it's kind of important to ensure that the community is transparent about the rules that are being created.
So Austin, I really want to know, what are you most excited about with coming in the future of Elastic Security?
Well, this actually was kind of at first it was kind of an annoying thing, but then it turned good. So one of the most annoying things initially when I started using Elastic was my first year, it was the endpoint security at that time was only available for enterprise, and that really bugged me. But when they added their XDR to their platinum plan, that made me super happy when it comes to the Elastic security as a whole. I think it's definitely going to change the game on how endpoint security companies try to do their stuff. But for Elastic purpose, what I also am super curious about and excited about for the future of Elastic is some other couple things that just recently happened that got me kind of interested was the announcement of Elastic acquiring cloud security companies, build security, as well as CMD. I'm very interested in seeing how those companies will basically transform Elastic in the future when it comes to security. That's what I'm the most excited about.
I know one of the most fantastic things I'm excited about is the fact that they're putting in the responses into API calls, into detection rule actions. So you'll actually be able to isolate host, immediately as a response. So definitely, everybody, listening to us, get in the chat. If for some reason something doesn't get talked about, network afterwards. Jump on right now, ask a question. If you thought something was funny or whatever, because that's definitely something that you want to take advantage of. Whether it's a community member you're talking to, or if it's an Elastic employee, especially anytime you get an Ask Me Anything session, ask them anything, any crazy idea, any crazy use case you can come up with. The virtual conferences have been fantastic. One thing I definitely encourage everybody to do is get involved on the chat. I'll be there to answer any questions. I know if Austin and Suhavi are available, they'll be there too. During the community conference, that was one thing we had the chat. And during a security discussion, I was able to talk, not at the community conference, but another ElasticCon kind of short conference on security. I was able to discuss in a small discussion room. I remember the first ElasticCon I went to, I was asking, hey, could we put, beats on, industrial control systems? Would we have a kernel that could do that? And we actually sat there and just mentally designed the whole BSD kernel we could use. And, it's just a lot of fun. You kind of get to geek out on Elastic and development issues. And, I definitely encourage everyone to do that. That's really made my career, really. Conferences in general, and just being willing to talk. I know, that's why, I was really happy to get Suhavi and Austin on this panel, because both of them, they're willing to engage with the community. They've been bright stars, and we're definitely lucky to have them. Let me thank both of you big time for coming on this panel, because that's amazing. Again, the Elastic meetup groups, I know I've been able to speak twice at them, and like Suhavi said, the best way to learn something is just to go and build it. So what I did was I was using those talks as an excuse to learn new things in Elastic. I'd volunteer for a subject and go, okay, got to put my money where my mouth is, and put together a project that I would present for the meetup group. So I definitely encourage everybody. Remember, teaching can be a way to learn. I know we all have very busy lives, we all have schedules, but that can give you that extra boost. You light the fire under yourself to really push yourself a little out of your comfort zone, and really help this community go forward. So I think at this point we're going to cut our panel, but we thank you all for watching with us and discussing with us, and definitely encourage you to get into the QA chat. We'll definitely be there as much as we can. And thank you. And to quote a very famous newsman, good night and good luck.